Abandoned. The warning lights bathed the bridge of the Ascendant in crimson. Commander Varixnal pressed his scaled hand against the viewport, watching the last of his fleet's ships vanish into the fold space corridor. They were gone. All of them. And his crew, his family, had been left to die. "Commander, the reactor core is at 12%, reported Lieutenant Kessa, her crystalline features reflecting the emergency lights in fractured patterns. Her voice carried the weight of acceptance that came when hope abandoned you. "Life support will fail in 4 hours. Maybe 5. Varixnal turned from the viewport, forcing himself to meet the eyes of his bridge crew. 15 souls looked back at him. 15 faces that had trusted him, followed him, believed in him, and now he had nothing to offer them but the truth. "Send one final transmission to High Command," he said quietly. "Tell them the Ascendant served with honor until the end." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The Ascendant had been a scout vessel for the Corps of Ingenuity, exploring the frontier sectors for 3 cycles. They had mapped 18 new systems, discovered 4 pre-spaceflight civilizations, and never once failed a mission. But when their jump drive suffered a cascading failure in the middle of nowhere, when their distress call went out, the fleet had calculated the odds. Rescue would take too long. Resources would be wasted. The cold mathematics of survival had condemned them. "It's not right," whispered Ensign Mothran from the navigation station. The young officer's antennae drooped. "We served faithfully. We followed every protocol. How can they just leave us?" "Because efficiency is survival," Varixnal replied, repeating the doctrine they'd all been taught since the academy. "The needs of the many outweigh—" "Commander!" Kessa's voice cracked with something Varixnal hadn't heard in hours. Urgency. "I'm detecting a ship. Unknown signature bearing 27 Mark IV. Varixnal's hearts, both of them, lurched. "Fleet Command changed their mind?" "Negative, sir. The signature doesn't match any Corvin vessel." Kessa's fingers danced across her console, her crystalline face reflecting confusion. I don't recognize the configuration at all. Wait, cross-referencing with the diplomatic database." The bridge fell silent except for the steady beep of failing systems. Every eye fixed on Kessa as she worked. Varixnal felt a strange sensation crawling up his spine. Hope, maybe, or perhaps just the delay before final disappointment. "Match found," Kessa said slowly, as if she couldn't quite believe her own readings. "Sir, it's a human ship. Humans." Mothran's antennae perked up. "But we're 3 sectors outside the Human Systems Alliance territory." What would they be doing out here? Varixnal knew enough about humans to be confused. The young species had joined the galactic community only 80 cycles ago. They were known for being unusual, emotional, irrational. They made decisions based on feelings rather than logic, which made them unpredictable trading partners and uncomfortable diplomatic presences. But they were also 3 sectors away from having any reason to be here. "Are they responding to our distress beacon?" Varixnal asked. "Unknown, sir, but they're definitely on an intercept course." Kessa paused, then added, "They're hailing us." On screen. The main display flickered, and a human face appeared. Female, Varixnal thought, though human sexual dimorphism was subtle to his eyes. She had dark skin and darker hair pulled back in a practical style. Her brown eyes were sharp, assessing. She wore a uniform that was clean but well used. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the HSA Relentless," the human said in flawless galactic standard, though her accent was distinctly human, round vowels and hard consonants. "We picked up your distress signal. What's your situation?" Varixnal straightened, trying to maintain the dignity of command even as his ship died around him. "I am Commander Varixnal of the Corvin scout vessel the Ascendant. Our jump drive failed catastrophically. Reactor is failing. Life support is limited." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Where's your fleet? Why haven't they responded?" The question struck Varixnal like a physical blow. How did one explain to an emotional species that logic had sentenced them to death? They determined rescue was not viable, he said carefully. The resource cost versus probability of success. "They left you." Chen's voice went flat. Not a question. A statement. And beneath the words, Varixnal heard something that made his scales prickle. Anger. "They ran the numbers and abandoned their own people." "It is standard protocol in the Corvin Unity," Varixnal explained, though he found himself wondering why he was defending the decision that had killed him. "Efficiency dictates efficiency can go to hell." Chen interrupted, and several of her bridge crew behind her nodded. Captain, we're not abandoning anyone. Prepare your crew for rescue operations. Varixnal felt his mind struggle to process her words. Captain Chen, with respect, you don't understand the situation. Our ship is dead. The reactor cannot be restarted. Even if you took our crew aboard, that would strain your life support and consume resources you need for your own mission, Commander. Chen leaned forward, and Varixnal saw something in her eyes that he'd never seen in a Corvan commander. Absolute certainty. My mission right now is making sure you and your crew survive. Everything else is secondary. Understood? Varixnal opened his mouth, then closed it. In his 15 cycles of service, he'd never heard anyone say something so beautifully, recklessly illogical. I don't understand, he admitted quietly. Why would you help us? You gain nothing. It only costs you. Captain Chen smiled then, and it was a strange expression. Not the threatening display of teeth that some prey species used, but something warm. Human smiles, Varixnal had read, were not threats. They were offers of connection. Because you need help, she said simply. That's reason enough. Now, Commander, how long until your life support fails?
4 hours, Kessa called out.
Maybe less. Then we'd better work fast. Chen turned to someone off-screen. Williams, prep the engineering team. Yan, ready the med bay. And someone get me every schematic we have on Corvan vessels. We're going to save a ship today. The transmission ended. Varixnal stared at the blank screen, his mind's reeling. Around him, his crew exchanged confused glances. Hope was a dangerous thing. It made the inevitable end more painful. But as Varixnal watched the human ship grow larger in the viewport, moving toward them with purpose and impossible determination, he felt it anyway. Perhaps humans were as irrational as the reports claimed. Perhaps they truly didn't understand the mathematics of survival. Or perhaps, and this thought made Varixnal's scales tingle, perhaps they understood something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. All stations, prepare to receive the human rescue team, he ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. And crew, perhaps today we learn something new. As the Relentless drew alongside the Ascendant, Varixnal permitted himself something he hadn't allowed in hours. The possibility that this story might not end in darkness after all. The impossible, the key. Human rescue team arrived like a force of nature. Varixnal stood in the docking bay with Kessa and 2 security officers, watching the airlock pressurize. His training told him to maintain diplomatic composure, to greet their would-be rescuers with the formal protocols appropriate for first contact between species. But protocols felt distant and meaningless as his ship groaned around them, reactor core dropping to 8%. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. 6 humans emerged in hard suits that looked simultaneously advanced and hodgepodge, panels of different materials patched together, equipment strapped to every available surface. They moved with a purposeful efficiency that reminded Varixnal of military units. But their formation was looser, more adaptive. The leader pulled off her helmet, revealing Captain Chen. She was shorter than Varixnal expected. Humans rarely exceeded 2 meters, but she filled the space with presence. Behind her, the team ranged in size and color, representing the diversity humans were known for. One was built like a boulder with pale skin and red hair. Another was tall and lean with brown skin and close-cropped hair. A third was Asian-featured with streaks of purple in her black hair. Commander Varixnal, Chen said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. Varixnal had read about this, the handshake, a ritual of trust from when humans needed to prove they held no weapons. He took her hand, fascinated by how warm human skin was. Their species ran hot, he remembered. Captain Chen, I must stress again that our situation is critical. I know, Williams, status report? The boulder-sized human was already scanning the corridor with a handheld device. Reactor's worse than we thought, Captain. They've got maybe 3 hours, and that's optimistic. Life support's failing sector by sector. We need to work fast. Then let's not waste time on formalities, Chen said, turning back to Varixnal. Commander, I need access to your engineering bay and your senior engineer. My team needs to see the reactor core directly. Of course, but... Varixnal hesitated. Captain, our chief engineer examined every possibility. The reactor cannot be restarted. The cascade failure damaged the containment matrix beyond repair. Even if you could re-establish containment, we don't have the materials to... Commander. The purple-haired human stepped forward, her suit covered in more tools than Varexnal knew existed. I'm Lieutenant Kai Nguyen, Chief Engineer of the Relentless. I promise you I've heard the words beyond repair before. They're usually wrong. But our engineers, Gar Corvin, Nguyen said not unkindly. You build for efficiency and reliability. You design systems that work perfectly within their parameters. That's excellent engineering. But humans? She grinned. We specialize in making broken things work when they absolutely shouldn't. Another of the team, the tall, lean one, laughed. Kai once restarted a drive core using spare parts from a coffee maker. That was one time, Marcus, Nguyen protested. And it was a very sophisticated coffee maker. Varexnal felt his mind struggle with the absurdity. They were joking. His ship was dying, they were racing against time, and they were making jokes. Please, he said quietly, show them to engineering. Varexnal's chief engineer Thexvan was an older Corvin with scales gone silver with age. He'd served on 17 vessels and had forgotten more about reactors than most engineers learned in their careers. When the humans arrived, he was sitting at his station, staring at the dead core readouts with the exhausted patience of someone who'd accepted the inevitable. Chief Thexvan, Varexnal said gently, the humans are here to help. Thexvan turned roomy eyes to the rescue team, then back to his displays. Help? Commander, the containment matrix has 7 fractures. The magnetic stabilizers are fused. The fuel cell alignments are 13 degrees off specification. There is no help. There is only mathematics, and the mathematics say we're dead. Okay, Nguyen said, stepping forward and pulling out a scanning device. But have you tried turning it off and on again? Thexvan's scales flared in indignation. This is not, you can't simply, joking. Sorry, gallows humor. Nguyen was already scanning the reactor display. Holy shit, you weren't kidding about the fractures. That's nasty. Williams, you seeing this? Williams had his own scanner out. Yeah, containment's toast. By any normal standards, this reactor's dead. Good thing we're not normal, Nguyen murmured. She turned to Thexvan. Chief, I need you to work with us. Show me your reactor specifications. All of them. Thexvan hesitated, then called up the files. As Nguyen studied them, her expression shifted from casual to intensely focused. Varexnal watched the human engineer's eyes move rapidly across the data, her fingers occasionally reaching out to rotate the 3-dimensional schematics. Okay, she said finally. I see the problem. Your safety protocols are too good. Too good? Thexvan's voice cracked with disbelief. Safety protocols prevent catastrophic failures. Sure, but they also shut everything down at the first sign of trouble. Your reactor didn't cascade because it was damaged beyond recovery. It cascaded because your safety systems locked it down too early. Nguyen pointed at the display. See here? The moment the containment matrix showed stress, your protocols initiated full shutdown. But if you'd let it run another 90 seconds, the automatic repair systems would have compensated. We would have risked an explosion. Maybe. Or maybe you would have saved the ship. Nguyen zoomed in on a section of the core. The damage looks catastrophic, but most of it happened during the shutdown sequence, not before. Your reactor tried to save itself and your safety systems killed it. Varexnal felt something cold settle in his stomach. Are you saying we caused this? No, Captain Chen interjected, her voice firm. You followed your protocols. They were designed by good engineers for good reasons, but sometimes protocols don't account for every situation. Sometimes, Nguyen added, you have to break the rules to survive. Marcus, the tall human, was working on a different panel. Captain, I think I can bypass the primary safety locks. Give us direct access to the containment system. Do it, Chen ordered. Wait. Thexvan's scales went pale. If you bypass the safety systems, any mistake will cause an immediate reactor breach. We'll all die instantly instead of slowly. Chief, Williams said, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a large man. We're going to die slowly if we don't try. At least this way we're doing something. Thexvan looked at Varexnal, desperate for sanity in the chaos. But Varexnal found himself thinking about Captain Chen's words. Because you need help. That's reason enough, do it, Varexnal said quietly. Nguyen's team moved with coordinated chaos. They pulled panels Varexnal didn't know could be removed. They connected human equipment to Corvin systems using adapters that looked like they'd been assembled from spare parts. They argued with each other in rapid human languages, English, Spanish, Mandarin, mixing them freely, pointing at screens and occasionally shouting corrections. It should have been disaster. It looked like disaster. But beneath the apparent chaos, Verixnell began to see something else. A team that worked together so intuitively that they didn't need formal protocols. They adapted in real time, each person anticipating what the others needed. "Kai, I need more power to the magnetic stabilizers," Williams called out. "Taking it from life support in Section 4, Nguyen replied without looking up from her work. "We're already dead if this doesn't work, so might as well borrow it now." "That's the spirit," Marcus laughed. Thexvan watched, his expression cycling between horror and reluctant fascination. "You're using a Corvin reactor to power human equipment to repair the Corvin reactor. That's circular logic." "That's bootstrap engineering," Nguyen corrected. "It's what we're good at." "Okay, containment matrix coming online. Williams ready with the stabilizers?" "Ready. Marcus, fuel cell alignment? Adjusting now. Going to be rough. Rough is better than dead. Commander Verixnell, you might want to hold on to something." Verixnell gripped a support rail. Around the engineering bay, his crew did the same, watching with wide eyes as the humans worked. The reactor display showed containment power rising, but it was unstable, fluctuating wildly. "Kai, we're going to lose it," Williams warned. "No, we're not. Marcus, rotate the fuel cells 3 degrees. 3 degrees? That's going to... Trust me." The ship shuddered. Lights flickered. For a moment, Verixnell was certain they were all about to die. But then the fluctuations began to stabilize. The containment field strengthened. Power levels rose from 8% to 10, then 15. "Holy shit," Marcus breathed. "It's working." "Of course it's working," Nguyen said. But Verixnell could hear the relief in her voice. "I'm a professional. Okay, 20% and climbing. We're not out of the woods yet, but the reactor's alive." Thexavan stared at the displays as if they'd betrayed him. That shouldn't be possible." Captain Chen smiled that warm human smile. "Chief, you're going to learn something about humans today. We specialize in the impossible." What we learned. The Ascendant came back to life in stages. First, the emergency lighting faded as primary power restored to the bridge. The red warning lights that had bathed everything in crimson for hours finally went dark, replaced by the cool blue of normal operations. Then the environmental systems kicked in, and Verixnell felt the temperature stabilize, the air scrubbers humming back to life. On the main display, the reactor power curve showed a steady climb. 40%, 50, 60. Still far from optimal, but enough to live, enough to reach a station, enough to go home. Around the bridge, Verixnell's crew stood in stunned silence, watching systems come back online one by one. Kessa had tears streaming down her crystalline face, a rare display of emotion for her people. Ensign Mothran's antennae were fully extended, quivering with disbelief and joy. "Commander," Lieutenant Kessa said, her voice shaking. "We're receiving a transmission from High Command. They're demanding to know our status." Verixnell felt a surge of something bitter in his throats. "High Command, the ones who had calculated their death and flown away? Ignore them," he said quietly. "For now." He turned to Captain Chen, who stood near the navigation station with her team. They looked exhausted but satisfied, their hard suits smudged with grime and coolant. Nguyen was explaining something to Thexvan, who listened with the intensity of a student discovering a new universe. "Captain Chen," Verixnell said, approaching her, "I don't have words sufficient to express my gratitude. You saved my crew. You saved my ship. You did the impossible." Chen shook her head. "We did the necessary, Commander. That's all. But you had no obligation to us. No treaty requires Human Systems Alliance to rescue Corvin vessels. You gained nothing from this except depleted resources and danger to your own crew." Verixnell needed to understand. "Why did you help us?" Chen was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Commander, can I tell you a story?" "Of course." 200 years ago, before we had faster-than-light travel, humans explored our own solar system in fragile ships. The distances were vast and help was far away. Do you know what rule developed among those early explorers? Verixnell shook his head. You never leave anyone behind. You never abandon a ship in distress. Because today it's them, tomorrow it might be you. And the day after that, you'll both pull someone else out of the fire. Chen's eyes were intense. We learned that if we wanted to survive the void, we had to be willing to save each other. Always, no matter the cost. But that's not efficient, Verixnell said softly. Sometimes the cost is too high. Sometimes the mathematics are wrong, Chen interrupted gently. Because they don't factor in something important. What we lose when we let people die to save resources. We don't just lose those lives, Commander. We lose a piece of our own humanity. Humanity. Varixanol repeated the word, tasting its meaning. In galactic standard, it translated simply as the quality of being human. But he suspected the word carried more weight in their language. Commander, Williams called out from where he was working with another Corvan engineer. We've stabilized your main systems, but you're going to need proper repairs at a station. Your ship can limp to the nearest outpost, but I wouldn't push it. We understand, Varixanol replied. We are in your debt. Actually, Nguyen interjected, looking up from a console, we had an idea about that. Your ship needs repairs, right? And you've got a crew of skilled engineers who just watched us work. What if we escort you to Kepler Station? That's a human outpost 2 days from here, and we all work together on the repairs. Thexavan, who had been listening, stepped forward. Work together? You mean learn from each other? Exactly, Nguyen grinned. You've got engineering principles we've never seen. That efficiency you mentioned? The way your systems are designed to optimize every component? That's brilliant. We just came at the reactor problem from a different angle. Creative solutions to impossible problems. But imagine if we combined our approaches. Thexvan's scales rippled with an emotion Varixanol recognized. Excitement. The old engineer had just watched humans do the impossible. Now they were offering to teach him how. I would be honored, Thexvan said quietly. Captain Chen turned back to Varixanol. What do you say, Commander? We'll get your ship fixed properly and both our peoples learn something new. Seems like a fair trade. Varixanol felt his hearts, both of them, swell with something he couldn't quite name. The Corvan unity prized efficiency, logic, calculated survival. But these humans offered something his people had forgotten. Partnership, community, the willingness to extend a hand, not because it was efficient, but because it was right. Captain Chen, he said formally, on behalf of the crew of the Ascendant, I accept your offer. We would be honored to work alongside your people. Outstanding, Chen smiled. Marcus, plot a course to Kepler Station. Best speed that won't stress their reactor. Aye, Captain. As the human team began coordinating with the Corvan crew, Varixanol noticed Ensign Mothrin approaching shyly. The young officer held a datapad nervously. Commander, Mothrin said quietly, I've been composing a message to High Command. I thought we should tell them what happened here, what the humans did. Let me see it, Varixanol said. The message was straightforward, clinical even, describing the rescue operation in technical terms. But at the end, Mothrin had added a personal note. The humans saved us when our own fleet deemed us expendable. They risked their resources, their time and their safety for strangers. They did not calculate whether we were worth saving. They simply chose to help. Perhaps this is something we should study more carefully than any of their technology. Perhaps this is why they have thrived, despite being such a young species. They understand something we have forgotten, that true strength is not in the decision to let others die for efficiency, but in the determination to help them live. Varixanol read it twice, then nodded slowly. Send it. Exactly as written. Yes, Commander. As Mothrin moved back to his station, Varixanol found himself watching the human crew. They were already integrating with his people, humans and Corvan working side by side at consoles, pointing at displays, exchanging ideas in broken galactic standard and creative hand gestures. Captain Chen caught him watching and walked over. Something on your mind, Commander? She asked. I'm trying to understand, Varixanol admitted. In 3 hours, you've taught us more about survival than I learned in 15 cycles of service. But it wasn't about technology or tactics. It was about choice. Choice, Chen repeated, nodding. Yeah, that's a big part of being human. We don't always make the logical choice, Commander. Sometimes we make the right one. And sometimes, she smiled, they're not the same thing. Your species is very strange, Varixanol said, but he meant it as a compliment. We get that a lot, Chen laughed. Come on, Commander. Let's go look at your reactor. Haosuyan wants to explain her theory about why Corvan safety systems are too risk-averse, and I want to see if your chief engineer argues with her. It should be educational. As they walked toward engineering, Varixanol reflected on the day's events. His fleet had left him to die because the mathematics of survival demanded it. But these humans, these strange, emotional, illogical humans, had saved him because their hearts demanded it. Perhaps there was a lesson there. Perhaps efficiency wasn't the only measure of civilization. Perhaps the willingness to help, to improvise, to care about strangers in the void was its own kind of strength. Perhaps humanity's greatest power wasn't in what they built or how they fought. It was in their refusal to accept that anyone was beyond saving. As the Ascendant set course for Kepler Station, escorted by the relentless, Veriksnal made a decision. When they reached port, he would request a formal exchange program between the Corvin Unity and the Human Systems Alliance. His people had much to learn, not just about engineering or improvisation, but about something far more important. What it meant to choose compassion over calculation, hope over logic, and life over efficiency. In the end, that was what humanity had taught him. Some things couldn't be reduced to numbers. Some things were simply worth doing because they were right. And in the cold mathematics of space, that made all the difference.